Hello, everybody. It's the Data Dictionary Workgroup. And I'll go ahead and dive right in. Hello, there we go. That's me, my contact info. And there we go. I guess I got to press harder. So I want to say thank you to Kevin. He's put in quite some time. There you are. I'm going to embarrass you now. But don't worry, I won't tell everybody I love you. He's retiring. And I hope we can get him to come out to these meetings and hang out with us. But I just want to show my appreciation for his effort and being part of, what I think is a pretty important thing for our industry. All right, you know this routine. RESO strives to increase competition in the marketplace. It will not be a forum for anti-competitive conduct. The RESO antitrust policy governs the activities of RESO and its members, including this meeting. Please consult RESO's counsel if you have any questions about the policy. All right, we're gonna break this up into two parts. We're gonna go over some more kind of theoretical. As usual with mine, if you guys participate, it won't be boring. If I just talk, I promise you at least one of you will be asleep before we get done. And then our second half is going to be, there we go. It's going to be talking about regular agenda items. And you might recognize some of these. And this will be a discussion format. So we'll be looking for participation and questions. So this will be a good opportunity for you to, ask, well, what is it that you guys are doing with this? Think about how it might impact you, what you might need to do back home to align with these changes that are coming up. All right, first thing I want to talk about is versions. There's a lot of discussion going on around versions, and I've got some other slides for it, but first of all, just to let you know where we're at is 1.7's being sunsetted, right? And probably most of you who are involved in getting your certification know that 2.0 has an evolution of requirement, right? We're starting to check things that, we hadn't checked in the past, but it was part of the game plan. New software needed to be built, a lot of work that Josh had put into over the years has come to fruition and is really upping the game to make sure that these data sources that are certified are more consistently visible to what's dictionary, right, what's not, and getting those certifications tighter to help improve things for the data consumer. And then we've got 2.1 coming. So we closed it off in the fall. That's our usual cadence. Right? And we've always used these sub numbers until we thought, oh, okay, let's do 2.0 because we are putting in new certification and all that kind of stuff. So that's why we did that number jump. But we're going to talk a bit more about numbers. And a little clue here is this 2.1, well, should it be 3.0? And we're going to talk about what these versionings that we have and what we're pivoting to. All right, so before, it was just a number and I would just increment it, right? But now what we're doing is breaking it down to the types of changes. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the cadence. So to give you the idea, if we have a 2.0 or a 3.0, that means that within is a breaking change. And we've got some pretty good definition. RESO has a paper. When Josh shared it with me, it was very illuminating. And I definitely invite you to take a look at that. I think that'll be an important part of getting to know these details. But I think we're going to have some more discussion as well. And right now, major is a major. But as we start getting into introducing minor, then major and minor start to differentiate. Where major is things that deemed will break you, your client, whatever that might be. And we've got some clear cases on this. For example, if you go in and change list price, right, to price, on your data consumers. Your field name just changed on them. And for a lot, that'll create a break. You change your data types, that breaks things. Right now, we've got the determination that deprecations are also breaking, right? So a field just disappears. And so we would only do those with major changes. Minor, generally additions these days, you throw in another field, it doesn't tend to break things. Throw in another enumeration, depends on what you're doing with that field. But that's a good example, is additions of the minors. All right? And then patch is the innocuous stuff. And the most common thing that we would do is go in and fix definitions. And if you're, I would say, overly leveraging those definitions, the first thing I'd say to you is, well, why didn't you write a definition and send it in? Because that was the original reason for the wiki, was let's get everybody participating in writing definitions so we can all be authors on the dictionary. But there are some other things. Payloads is one that we're, right now, basically have deemed as innocuous, right? But depending on how the industry is engaging with that, and if you have a dependency and mechanisms, that might be one of the things where you say, hey, wait a minute, I'm using those payloads, and if you were to just change it, that would cause this to happen, right? And so we might want to up the level on that. And again, I'm just talking about like what you see in the wiki, or if you pull down the spreadsheet or the XML, and you're automating things against this, right? Or say you're not automating it, but you've got payloads and you want to make sure they stay in alignment. So when you change it, you feel that's breaking, right? Then you'd want to speak up with regards to that. One of them that I think is a little bit up in the air is around synonyms. Synonyms started off as just another name for the same thing. Didn't really mean much more than that. But synonyms today are very clearly, if you use this, you're going to fail because you should be using the standard name, right? And we'll use synonyms. One of the things we'll be doing is continuing to evolve those synonyms. We need to work on them. So when we come up with more synonyms, right, or even when we take some out, which we've done, what do we want to call that? Do we want to call that a breaking change, right? I can see a scenario where I add a synonym and suddenly a bunch of people are broken, right? You have to change your field name, otherwise your certification. But we need to have discussion around that one in particular, as well as the deprecations and the payloads, and get your thoughts in. So with regards to the cadence, we were kind of at a year per version and per version. And then I think it was going from 1.6 to 1.7. We knocked out in like 6 months, and it was massive. We had like 900 additions because we were pouring in enumerations. And so there was some backlash. And right now, the common thinking is once a year. Well, if major is less things and breaking things, what cadence do you think, right? Speaking up, talking about it. If you've got a proposition, going into Confluence and putting in a post and saying, hey, this is what I think the cadence should be, is how the conversation occurs. And we'll get back to how you can participate. But then when it comes to minor, okay, this doesn't break it. Let's just pour them out there. We could fling them out there however we want, subject to the board being okay with this. And even some discussions around that are, okay, we've got all these minor patches, and then when the major comes in, you know, that goes through the ratification process anyway, so hey, this could all work great, kumbaya. I think that might be a little naive, and I really welcome thought and discussion on this as far as the cadence, especially around minor. Because you'll talk to some camp and they want to move fast. They're really agile. They want to get this field in. They want to get this enumeration in, and they want to do it quick, right? So what happens if that new addition isn't seen as local, right? Which is kind of how it works today. You throw something in early, it's local. But what if it isn't seen as local, right? What if we do open this up? And this opens up two issues for me, which is the question of, if we have a minor change and we don't sit in the normal draft period for 6 months or more, and we just launch it out there. So now it's a version that's been launched. If we change our mind while we're in draft, we just change our mind. And anybody who adopted early, hey, you knew the risks. And if you don't know the risks, talk to me. But if it's now a version and we want to modify it, well, modifications are pretty much breaking. So now we've taken this thing that's just easy to cast out there, didn't take long enough to think about it, and now we're modifying it. And if people are really adopting these minor changes quickly, we could make a little bit of a mess. So that's kind of a counterpoint to being agile. I love moving fast. I mean, I got a committee and I say, yeah, no problem, and I have it rolled out by that afternoon, they love me, right? But sometimes you don't want to be loved by your committees. You want to protect them from what could wind up being a much more painful experience. So definitely something to ponder is, do we keep draft? We could do all of the above. We could say, okay, we're going to do minors this often, more frequently, but we're going to have a draft period, maybe not 6 months, maybe it's a couple weeks, maybe it's a couple months. So, you know, this isn't set in stone. This is a great time to get involved in the discussion and help form what we're going to do based on your scenario, right? And it's only through getting enough participation that we get enough scenarios where we mitigate doing something stupid, right? And trust me, I've done plenty of stupid stuff being in a rush. Okay, so one thing that comes up is with regards to, you know, what's the next version? And I even get questions, how do I get to the prior versions? So the current and prior versions are pretty straightforward. You just go to the wiki, and wherever you are, if you just click on the RESO logo up at the top left, it'll pop you on this page, and you'll have the links to the wikis of the 2 current versions, and then you'll have links down below in the middle of the page to versions. We go back to 1.5. If anybody for some strange reason wants before 1.5, give me a holler and I'll send you the spreadsheet. We didn't have the wiki or anything then, it was just me in Excel. So if you're interested in the history, it's there, but I think you have everything you need. Now, we're constantly working on it, and I think we've got a pretty good system today, but Josh and I were talking about like how to up that game a little bit. Because with future versions, one, we've got posts, right? And we can make that link a little bit more obvious as far as what's all there. And then also you've got Confluence, and you can go into Confluence and see status on discussions and see what the decisions were on those discussions. So you are kind of subject to piecing it together, and I think we can tighten that up. And we've got some, you know, something as well as far as voting that I'll cover that might help play into making that easier, right? And then if we get like a future wiki out there or something, then you can kind of see, here's the future version in its current state. That's a little dangerous because somebody might think it's final because it's a wiki, so maybe that's not a great idea. But we're looking to evolve that, and bringing in your ideas is welcome. All right, participation. This is a work group. This isn't a hang out and listen group. You can, and as long as you go back and make sure you got your bases covered, then that's fine. But if you're not interacting and not pushing forward your needs and wants, it's not just a detriment to you, it's a detriment to all of us, right? It's important that you champion things. And so I've kind of laid out the map of sort of the progression of desired responsibility beyond just putting up a post, right? And I've gone over how to do a post. You can always email, and I'll have the address up here on the screen in a second, and say, hey, I want some help with the post. We'll even do it for you. We'll just ask you what you want posted. And I also welcome bringing the idea to have a conversation about it. maybe there's a history there that we can help you with. Maybe there's some other perspective. But then what you really want to do is start working on your consensus, right? Even before you post. I would say that is a good approach, because you can help evolve what you're going to put out there and make it easier for people to look at it and say, oh yeah, I'm in favor. So getting out and doing that networking, forming consensus in advance isn't like subverting the vote or manipulating. That's actually just good practice for good standards. And then how to submit. You go on to Confluence. If you don't have a login, on the next page I'll have where to go to get that. Again, if you're not comfortable with it, come talk to me, talk to Jason, send an email to DD, and we'll make sure you're totally fine with submitting stuff. If you submit something that's completely stupid, we will shoot you. There is an audience out here, great, okay. It's fine. It's better to have a bunch of junk and one nugget than no nugget, by far. So don't be bashful if you don't think your idea has merit or you're not sure about it, and you don't want to ask. I'd say just stick it out there anyway. It's much better to get the topic out and get people talking. You never know what it'll turn into when you get a community discussing things. So then we go into that review period. If you haven't put it on the dictionary wiki or on the dictionary Confluence board, right, we are not going to talk about it. I don't care who you had a conversation with. I don't care who you are, what work group chair you are, anything. It doesn't matter. This is the process, period. Because if you talk to me and I think it's a great idea and I forget, sorry, right? I am kind of forgetful. Put it up on the wiki and you're set, right? Requirements should be up there for at least a couple weeks. I think having it up there for longer and promoting a discussion in the wiki is a lot more healthy, because then when it comes to the work group for the vote, right, and we'll have a discussion as we always do in the work group, it'll already been exercised. Thoughts will be flushed, and your request will be a lot more vibrant. I've had situations that, wow, this seems like it could be pretty impactful, and nobody has said anything. And we literally at the meeting just say, you know what, there's just not enough participation, nobody's talking. We're going to table this until somebody is ready to start to champion this. And really, that's kind of the requirement back out to you, right? Your company's paying for you to be a member of RESO, right? And taking information back and giving them reports is great, but you need to reciprocate by putting back into RESO and helping drive things. Your company will wind up a lot better off if you're helping drive the standard rather than being victim to it. And I say victim because sometimes it's a lot of work. Voting. We're looking at changing voting. So this is special for Divina. I think you've Skyped it out of the room. Maybe you knew that I was going to pick on you. We're not going to be voting here today. Matter of fact, we're going to shift our voting from a moment to a window. Because if you didn't make the meeting, you didn't make the meeting. If it's one of those situations where you didn't happen to read on the wiki, and then you're at the meeting, and there's a quick discussion, and everybody else is super clear, so you just say, well, I'll say aye also, because everybody else likes it. Okay. I mean, I'll take a bunch of ayes and we move on. I like progress. But by moving into where we have a window where we'll have a voting system of some sorts, and I'm kind of committing us to something that we don't have built, but I'm pretty sure we can get something into place, then we can create a window and say, okay, for the next week or whatever time period, if you think, hey, a week's not enough or a week's too long, chime in. And then you can take some time, think about your vote, and then cast it. So that's what we got coming for voting, and our first step to that is I usually would do voting on more innocuous types of measures here, just for a demonstration for those who haven't participated before. But we're not going to do that. Sorry. If that was a great demonstration of the power of the work group and you missed it, you missed it. But And then the approval process. Major, minor, how exactly that's going to work is still a little bit in question, but our mechanism right now is we vote it in, right? It goes into that draft period, subject to change and discussion, but for the most part, we hope it's pretty stable. We take care of the errata inside that window, hopefully. And then 6 months later, it'll go before the board for their ratification and generally implemented around the same time, subject to a lot of considerations, but we want to make sure that, that we've got that cadence, and the approval process is pretty strong. Now, what we would do with minor, that's still going to be in question, but for the most part, if you're in the work group and you do your part, you know, this final approval process for ratification, you don't need to necessarily jump in, but you know, pay attention. There might be a schedule set, and that might not work for you, so chime in. Okay, so one-stop shop DD at RESO.org. I know at least Jason and Josh and I are on the end of that, so you've got a pretty good audience. Throw anything that you want at that email address. I'll give you a second, make sure you got it, because that's a lot of letters. Let's see here. If you want to join the work group, you should be able to go into the RESO.org work groups page and sign up. And when you got an idea to kind of back up to that whole submission process, I don't really mind. Sometimes people will send me something and exactly what they're asking for is in the wiki. That's okay, but if you spend time looking at it, you might discover that what I'm asking for is in the wiki, but it's not exactly what I want. So now instead of framing your question as, I would like this, and getting an answer, we already got one, you might have a point to make about it and might actually have a successful post. So make sure you do your research in advance. Again, you can get spreadsheets if that's your preference. And that's also where you can get through to the prior versions. All right. Ultimately, this has got to lead to that post. And here's the URL. But essentially, you log into Allison, and there's a DD workgroup link on there. So it's pretty easy to get to. Again, any trouble at all, give us a holler, because we want to make sure that everybody is exercising their voice. Okay, implementation strategy. How many people here spend a bunch of time mulling over how and when you're going to do things that are in the dictionary? That's nowhere near enough. There's a lot of dynamic. Okay, that's enough for at least 3.
I do enough for everyone.
But yeah, they pay you to worry about that. No sympathy here. I think the first thing as you're building up your strategy is to understand the role of the dictionary. I run into this a lot. I'll tend to say it's a pipe, and then I get puzzled looks. Because what I see is this notion of native, which I'll talk a little bit more, isn't being put in the right perspective necessarily. So what is the dictionary? It is not everything. So if you implement the entire dictionary only as it is and don't have any local fields, I guarantee you, you've got probably 10 to 20% of the fields your constituents do not need them, and you're also missing 10 to 20% or more of the fields they do need. The dictionary is commonality. Our initial target was like 70%. I think now we're hoping for 80. We've got the analytics, so I think we can do a better job of measuring that and using that as a marker for improvement. But it is not complete. It's not intended to be complete. And originally we decided this. We didn't want to create a rigid bloat. We wanted to create the things that were in common, would reduce that work, take 80% of the work out of the effort of mapping into a new data source, for example, right? but not stifle that data source to where they get to the point where it's like, if I don't have this field, you know, I'm going to get fired by my board, right? Because we do live in a local market-driven industry, and there's a lot of stuff that's just a semantic, and you can work through that, trust me. But, so if you just take the dictionary in a rigid way, I think you're making a mistake. So when to implement, right? So I've implemented stuff that was in draft. I've implemented stuff that I'd heard enough conversation, and I took the convention of the dictionary and guessed at what the field would be. And I've been right and I've been wrong. There's nobody that's going to stop you from implementing something early, but you need to think about it because it could easily get changed. Then again, something that's been ratified could get changed in the next version anyway, but it's a lot less of a risk. So if you are going early, make sure you balance out that risk reward with regards to doing that. And then once it gets into draft, a little bit more stable. And once we get up to ratification, quite a bit more stable at that point because it'll take another version to undo it, unless there's an errata. An errata should only be like a really big screw up, but you got a lot more stability if you wait just a little bit longer. And then ultimately, in order to achieve your certification, you got like another year. And of course, you have to have it done by that. So where to implement? This is where I come up with the expression, the pipe. We didn't build this to be the back end of a system, of a data source. That wasn't the topic or the thought or the effort whatsoever. Yet sometimes that happens. And I think this notion of native didn't come with enough caveats. I believe in native. Why have something called this and then have it called that when it's literally the same thing, right? Because in your system, you got label A, and people know it as that, and then going out your door to all your data consumers has got label B, right? And don't take the word label literally here. We're talking lofty. So they're going to see like that field name or enumeration, and they're going to show whatever you give to them. And then if you want them to show it the way you show it back in your system, you're going to have to ask them to do that, and they may or may not do that. So now you've just created this disparity between what your agents are using inside your system and the rest of the world. That is a very good reason for native. And it should be mostly semantical, but sometimes it's structural. Sometimes you've got a bunch of different pick lists, and your vendor, to get you certified, is doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Some of the enumerations get lost, or they get shoveled over into some generic bucket. So by bringing yourself into a little bit better alignment, and again, I'm just talking like when you're looking at the input form. I'm not talking about the technology. Don't let your vendor worry about that. I'm talking about your input form. Having that align with what's going out your door and showing up on a display out on a public website, I think is worth the pain of having your committee member upset because your jealousy windows are called louvered now, right? And we don't even actually have that in the dictionary, but that's been my example forever. So take native with a pinch of salt. Do it where it makes sense. Talk to your vendor, or if you are a vendor, you know, do you need to have a simple field name like equipment called other equipment? So do you need to make it other equipment inside your system? Yeah, probably not. You know, that's a pretty soft one. But if it's other equipment and somebody's got a spreadsheet and they're sorting the fields alphabetically and you've got equipment, they're going to be looking for it and they might think you don't even have the field. Now, they're not being thorough enough, but those are kind of some of the consequences with regards to native. So if you want to have more talks about it, there's plenty of people to have chats with, and I'm always available. If you're thinking about native and you want to talk more about that strategy, just give me a holler. It's definitely worth thinking about before you just go ahead and do it. But it's totally worth doing. And in general, RESO, the staff here, Jason, Josh, others, they're here to help you. When you're researching stuff, we're going to have RESO staff throughout. I might be retired and on an island and not answering calls. I don't think I'm going to wind up on an island, but you've got that anchor. Use it. When you're implementing something, ask questions. It's so much worth it, because otherwise those assumptions, you know how they can get you. Okay, so where's the dictionary going? Convention versus consensus. For some of you, this might be redundant. I've been saying it for a few conferences now, that we started off the dictionary basically based on a consensus. What do us, we would all gather in a room. We'd have like maybe 12 MLSs and like one vendor, and we never saw a broker back then, unless they happened to be a broker who owned an MLS or something like that. And so we put it together just basically looking for that commonality. And again, that to me made perfect sense, because what are we doing? We're reducing the friction on connecting. We're doing it by a percentage, it's not in total, but that does have its downsides. Like those of you who really want good quality metadata, you'll look at the dictionary and it's like, that one's plural and that one's not, and it doesn't make sense. Why did you do that? Well, that's a good one to bring up. We're actually more proactively going after things like that. You'll see we've got a new work group that's going after the duplication topic. This is going to be a good one, and I definitely recommend you take a look at it, because what somebody is saying is a duplicate, you might completely disagree with them, and if you're not there, it might be treated as a duplicate. And one of those two things might even become a synonym, and now you're not allowed. So that's a pretty heavy-hitting conversation, and I think you really need to be part of that. So progress. We've got work groups going. We've been regularly identifying things, whether we spot it, whether another work group brings it up, and adding it into the queue. I think 2.0's got some pretty good stuff that we've covered on that front to bring us more to a convention-based standard than a consensus. And for me, this has kind of been one of the two top things for the dictionary in general and the work group is process and getting us much more stable from a consistency standpoint via convention. And again, balance, that goes to, like, I'll give you an example. The most common example is you'll have like some feature field, a pick list, and then you'll have an associated yes, no. So you got like private pool, yes, no, and then you've got a list, and it's got private in it. And it's like, oh, well, that's totally redundant, because I got private and I got, public or community pool or whatever it is. And yeah, there's some cases where it can be, but you might have a case where you only have the yes, no field, because for some reason in your area having a pick list isn't a good thing. Or you might only have the pick list, or you might actually have both. And you've got a strategy with your data consumers where they're supposed to watch for that bit field and then take some action that has to do with the pick list. And so if you just take that away, maybe they've got some new processing. Now, I don't know. I'm making stuff up right now. The point is that we need to have that discussion as we do all of this convention changes. So when you see these bulk changes come in, and they'll get posted, and you have your chance to discuss, you want to watch out for these, because these are going to be some pretty heavy-hitting items. Deprecations, field name changes, all the things that will wind up being a major change, so you have a little more time, but they tend to be hard-hitting. All right. We love to enumerate pick lists, especially 1.7. I think it was 900 that we came up in a day and a half. It was a slam dunk, but it also kind of had the quality of a slam dunk. And Do we need to enumerate everything? There's a lot of lists out there. I can go to the post office and get a list. I can go to ISO, I can go to all these different sources, right, and get lists. So should we be reinventing the wheel with these over and over? Maybe, maybe not, right? It depends on what it is. I'd say our pool features, yeah, we're probably not going to find a great standardized list out there. And so you'll still get to enumerate, don't worry. If you love to add pick list items in your sleep, then you're fine. But there are a lot of established lists, you know? When you're talking about things like schools, states, you know, our cities are a little bit, not so much cities all the time, so who knows with that, but you know, school districts are pretty stable. There's some great databases out there. But then when you go to look at all these different sources, the options they have for any individual item, they vary. So I can go find a list and I'll see 2-letter code, 4-letter code, and fully spelt out, right? Well, for our value, we just need one. So we do need to think about how we're going to implement this and how we're going to give guidance for these lists that have many options in them, if we do use them. But once we have that established, then as those lists evolved by some authority who's looking a lot closer at it, hopefully looking at a lot closer at it than we are, then we're leveraging really good knowledge instead of recreating it in a day and a half, shooting from the hip, just to get things done, right? And I'm not knocking that day and a half. It was awesome. So we've got that question on how to implement these things. But those topics are going to be coming up. You should watch for them. And if you've got sources for lists, bring them to the table. We want to look as many of these sources for our enumerations as possible, so we can start looking at how we're going to guide people to implement this correctly, so you don't wind up with 3 different ways of field values are showing up for you, because that would just defeat the whole purpose. Okay, so we talked about submitting. That's kind of level 1, right? And make sure you're comfortable with doing a post, please. But then you want to do more. So the next tier up in giving your time away is to volunteer to champion an idea. Now that might just be your post, right? And you might do all that networking and really put an effort into it, right? And that is recognized. It's very much appreciated, and I see a lot more success just there. But then what if it's something that's a little bit bigger? We have things where we'll get a champion, and it takes a little bit more. We maybe have a separate meeting. It's not really a subgroup, but you know, at the end of the day, it needs a champion. It's a topic that needs some iteration, right? And so I would say if there's some idea you have and it looks like that, volunteer to champion the thing, right? And we won't give you a gold star or anything, but you'll be running it, right? It'll give you some experience if you're just itching to get up on stage here. That's a good first step. And then the other one, which is pretty commonly seen by everybody. Oh, sorry, go right ahead. Thank you. I'm not alone.
Is it on now?
Yeah.
It's on, okay, great. So I was just thinking that there were a few items here on previous slides that you had been discussing, and I wasn't sure when you were going to call for questions. So Sam, this is Sam's fault, told me to come up here and ask them all. So here we go, Sam's fault. The pick lists thing, I'll go in reverse order. When items should go into lists, this is what pick lists drive me crazy about, is sometimes a value should really appear in 2 places. And do we have a way to handle that elegantly yet?
A value should be in 2 places?
Yeah, so an enumerated value should appear in 2 different lists because it applies in 2 contexts.
Oh, okay, where it looks like it's duplicate, but it's not.
Right, so like if you have an Energy Star refrigerator, it's just one I cooked in my brain, that should go in appliances, and it should also go under green or energy efficiency.
Yeah, so, maybe. I think that's a good discussion
to
answer that.
And then the other part that came from the yes, no, and then having the enumerations, could we add something to the dictionary that says if you have an enumerated valued list and you check one of the values, if you also have a yes, no, it must immediately check that also. Could that be sort of cooked into the dictionary's explanation of those fields?
My only concern with that is now we're kind of telling you what to do.
But the counterexample is what you were saying before, where someone checks off private pool in the list of amenities, but there's a private pool or a pool yes, no, and that is set to no because the agent didn't notice it or see it. We end up with inconsistencies. And you're literally transmitting stuff that has contradictions. We fight with this quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. And that's in an implementation, right? Because the dictionary doesn't tell you what to do with it. It just tells you do it, make it look like this, right?
Right.
We could definitely open up, to me, that's a broader topic. I'm not bashful about getting into rules. You might rewind 10 years and I'm like, oh God, no, let's not talk about rules. But like Days on Market, we've done some work on that. So if that was something you wanted to talk about, we could certainly do that.
Cool. Can I keep going?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So early implementation, the struggle we face a lot is we want to implement something early to see how it's going to work, but it requires us to touch 12 million records. This is not something we want to early implement because we touch 12 million records, it changes 3 weeks later, we get to retouch 12 million. And you know who hates us when we do that? All of the other data share, Brian here and Joe over there.
Yeah.
Lots of people are unhappy when you do that. In fact, we're fighting with even when we want to update a bunch of data in our systems. It's like, do we touch the last modified date time? Do we not? So early implementation is a struggle if it touches records. And then the next concept on top of that is when you're doing major revisions. In the major and minor, you were calling for some feedback on that, I think. What causes a major revision? What doesn't? What causes a minor? And I would submit to you that if you have to touch 12 million records, that always should be put in the major category. Should only be part of a major update.
Well, that, depending on your implementation, that could be everything or nothing.
I see what you're saying. I think on the balance of things, though, you have a pretty good idea when you're thinking about what change to make. Oh, this is going to require everybody to touch every record in their database.
Yeah.
That, I think, should immediately be the first clue that it's got to be part of the major revision. It can't be in a minor update.
Okay. I would invite you, Jay, can we add a link onto the dictionaries board to the major minor patch definition that we have? That way it'll be easy for you guys to find it. You want to take a look at that. Kind of the perspective here is the difference between my implementation and my impact to my customers versus the impact that I create that is an impact to me and my customers as well. I'm probably not explaining that well, but take a look at it. Certainly we can put anything you want on the table and vet it out.
Oh, these are just ideas. Like, probably some of them are stupid. I think I'm famous for them by this point.
Oh, please do.
And then the last one I wanted to ask you about was, could you just run a session at the next RESO for like how to interact with Confluence and how to get comfortable with it? Just give us like a quick 30-minute, here's how you play with it, and here's some ways you can, add things to it. Just give us like a practical example. Maybe make a video or something if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, I had started off where it was like a live thing, and then it got more lame, or more time efficient to pictures. And this is the first time I didn't even have a picture. But I would be more than happy to set up a session, whether we do a full group or we could do something maybe where people can get in with their laptops and we can interact.
Cool.
Yeah.
Maybe at next RESO, that would be great.
That sounds great.
I got a couple other ones here, but I'll stop bugging everyone. I'll find you for a drink after.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you. All right, do we have any other questions at this point? Josh? Cool.
People who are interested in the versioning and the definitions, you can go to transport.reso.org/versioning.
Cool, thank you. All right, so subgroups. We've had some great volunteers. David was nice enough to take on a second group. That's great dedication. You're going to see more faces come in to run these subgroups, and you're chairing it. You're championing it. Your role as a chair is a little less about what you want and more about wrangling the cats and getting everybody to hopefully understand what it is that's on the table. But it's a great position to, if you like interaction, that's one of my favorite things, is the discussions. That this gets you more into a position where you get a lot more interaction. And if you're taking up more time and your company's like, what are you doing? And it's like, well, you can pretty quickly show how that enriches things to have that networking bump that happens when you volunteer these things. And then on top of that, if you're championing something that your board has voted for, they got to give you time to do it, right? So these subgroups, I guess on average, plan on a meeting an hour a month, but subgroups are finite. They're not going to carry on and on and on. You go there, you do a job, and you're done. But sometimes it does take a lot of meetings. You might have a topic that needs many sessions in order to accomplish the goal.
So I wanted to give Rob and wherever Jason went, pat on the back, because I just actually wrapped up a subgroup that the proposal is going in, and I don't know how I got labeled as like the subgroup chair or something, but Rob and Jason made me look like I knew what I was doing the entire time. So people are like, oh yeah, you did a great job, and I'm like, yeah, it was totally me. So for just literally getting landed in as the chair of a subgroup and never having done it before, it was a super easy process working with the guys. So yeah, it's not, oh, there he is, hey Jason. So yeah, not nearly as like scary as it sounds to be in charge of that, particularly if you have an idea you're championing. So,
Cool.
that's all I want to say.
Thank you. And if you've got further aspirations, the subgroup is the way you're going to get the foot in the door. We've got a new process where we want, and this is kind of a general governance, thing. If you got a position on your board, they're going to have to serve a year on the finance committee first. It's just that concept being enacted in our environment is all it is. So word has it there's going to be a vacancy in the vice chair seat. We're not in a rush. We definitely want folks to stand up and say, hey, yeah, I'm into this. But we're also going to add some rigor to it to make sure that, you're into it, that it's something that you want to do. And then ultimately, I expect one of these days somebody's going to hit me over the back of the head and there'll be a vacancy here. And so if that's your aspiration, if I keep talking, it might be later this afternoon. So put yourself into queue, have those conversations. Even if you don't have something you want to champion, you can come forward and say, I want to run a subgroup. I'm built to do this, right? Do that. We have topics come up. We do have to seek out chairs, right? And sometimes, like last night, I had dinner with a chair that didn't even know they were going to be a chair because someone else volunteered them. Still don't know for sure if they're going to be a chair or not. All right, and so the whole thing by building up the structures, we create a continuity in the leadership of the dictionary work group that can just perpetuate and is based on fostering people having a chance to grow and get comfortable with this job. All right. Okay. Little quick shift as a preamble to the second part of the meeting here is I want to talk about framework. And to give you an example of a framework that we have, rooms, it's kind of a framework, right? You might call it a subtable or a related table, right, or a collection. And we can do things in there. And as things change, we can update that without having a huge alteration. And so as we create these frameworks, we really want to try to be, future-looking in that, okay, this might happen this way, this might happen that way. And one example that we have is with regards to some of the green stuff that we have, right? The green verification, or you might call it certifications. That's very much a framework. And it's got a bunch of specifics in it, right? So I've got this certification type, and it has this score, completely different from other certifications. So it is a framework that supports certifications. And the current example that we have is as we're breaking into the international market, which is very, very healthy for us, First thing is it's proving out that this framework is doing exactly what it should be. It's not overly US, it's not overly Canada, it's not overly anywhere. It's a framework. And so we're finding that with this work, things are just naturally falling in, you know. Now, new ideas come along. Maybe there's an enumeration addition, right? Maybe there's some education that, okay, this is a related table, so you can stack things up in here. But for the most part, what we're seeing is there's not going to be any major changes with this particular project. And to me, that's like a home run with regards to frameworks. All right, any other questions before we move on to what we currently have on our agenda? All right, I'm going to pull Jason up here, and he's going to give you all a rundown.
All right, so we're going to talk about some current topics that all of these coming up should be bumped up onto the top of the forum, which I just did a bit ago, so that you don't have to hunt through them, because some of them are kind of old. So, first thing, we have talked about this once in a meeting. There's a proposal for communicating energy performance certificates for the European Union. There's also some other international things going on. We got a request for a subgroup to focus on that, basically identify areas in the dictionary where it could be use expansion for international use cases. I think that sounds like a good idea, and we will probably go ahead with that in the near future. So this is sort of related here. There's a proposal to communicate green building, or energy performance certificate information. We currently have the property green building verification resource, and what we tried to do is fit it into that as much as possible, not reinvent the wheel. And so the proposal laid out the requirements with two categories. There's energy efficiency, environmental impact, which is CO2. Each of those has 2 scores, current and potential. And what we'd like this to be able to do, ideally, when it's populated with data, is generate charts such as these, this is an example off of a website that was included with the proposal. So you can see there, those kind of how the structure of it is. You can see the 2 ratings, and then they each have a current and potential score. I've actually put out there 5 different proposals of various simplicity or not. I think I was trying to reinvent the wheel at first. The screenshot here kind of just shows the most recent one. So you see it's utilizing most of the fields most of it is utilizing the fields that exist currently. There's only a couple new additions proposed, and then there's a couple new lookups proposed as well. Again, if you can go look at this, that would be great. It's up at the top of the forum now. Comment on it, make suggestions. There's, on that same sheet, there's 4 other options to varying degrees of impact. But this is the most recent one, and you can see it's got the requirement, the field it would use, the lookup it would use, whether or not that is new or current, and then an example value that would populate that item. Again, with the international stuff, there was a proposal for communicating currency and currency type information. There could be as simple as a field just named currency type that you would apply to the whole record, like a whole property record. It actually was originally called, record currency, I think, but there was some disagreement with that. So perhaps currency type is better. The other option is to go more in depth if you want to communicate the source of the data, what currency that was in, or if there's conversion information that needs to be communicated. A big thing with this and everything else as well is you want to use existing standards if they're out there. In this case, there is ISO 4217 for currency types, and I understand there are libraries and other resources for actually converting currency, communicating that information. So if you can comment on that as well, give feedback on how in-depth that should be, what needs to be communicated for currency. Disaster fields. This one seems like a no-brainer. It has been out there for a while. We've had it on a couple agendas and didn't get to it. So the gist of the request is that when hurricanes and stuff like that happen, obviously people are displaced, and there's probably caps on how long they can stay at a hotel. People buy up all the rentals in the area. And this simply is a request for 2 fields to show whether or not disaster relief is available, which would, I'm sure, be popular in markets where disasters happen often. Just simply yes or no, and then a remarks, 4,000 characters to communicate the details or the specifics for whatever location that's in. Again, also at the top of the forum, if you want to comment on that. We are not voting on anything today, as Rob was saying earlier. This would probably be a one that would be voted on virtually once we institute that. That is something we are developing now, and you will see something soon on that. High-speed internet. This is an older one too. So right now in the dictionary, I believe there's one thing. It's in interior features. It just says high-speed internet. That's it. This is a request to give some more information. Just a Boolean field, high-speed internet, yes, no. Which something was pointed out on this that really needs to be defined. What is considered high-speed internet? I believe the FCC is 25 megabits per second download speed or up. That could have changed, but I think that's what it was, what I read. But either way, that should be communicated in the agenda, in the definition. And then there would be a lookup field for the type fiber optic, cable, and wireless, and then the 2 options of whether it's connected or available. I could see possibly wanting to segment that into another field, maybe connection status or something, as opposed to having fiber optic available, cable available, and so forth. But yep, that seems like a good one too. Another candidate for like an online vote. I don't think it is going to need a huge meeting discussion. But like I said, I think it is important that what high-speed internet is be defined in there. So take a look at that and comment and feedback. The rest of it, which I didn't remember, max download speed field, max upload speed field, and then the units that they're measured in, megabits per second, gigabits per second. And that should be it. Okay, territories of the United States, and basically, it's not limited to that. Other states that are in countries outside of the United States, right now in the dictionary, like items like American Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, they are under the country field, which there is an entry for that in the ISO 3166 standard, which is in the definition for all of the countries that it's using that standard. However, there is a state entry for them as well. There's also USPS entries for those as US territories. So this is coming up in the fast track certification as well, where people were getting suggestions for like Guam to go to a country, which it really is not. So what we need here is probably a proposal to add these options to the state or province field. I think that would be the easiest thing to do, and then also we'd want to clarify that definition of that field, that it also includes U.S. territories and perhaps states from other countries, like Mexican states, for example. Because right now there really is no way to communicate those in a standard way in the dictionary. They'd have to be like an additional local item. And if any of the writers of these requests would like to comment, feel free to walk onto the mic and add to what I've said. Continuation on that one. Canadian provinces and territories are actually included. We'd probably want to consider that with other countries as well. Okay, data dictionary definitions. This one is a long time coming. You've all seen them. This house is made wholly or partly of brick. So there's a post out there now that's also towards the top. It's basically the data dictionary 2.1 draft sheet with an extra column next to each definition in both fields and lookups. It's like 209 fields and 2,100 something lookups that have proposed changes. There's an example there of using exterior features of the current definition and the proposed changes. I did use AI assistance for this. I also changed almost every single one of them a little bit because, you know, it's not great what exactly it spits out, but it's a good starting point. So what we want you to do is review these, especially something that might be more location specific or have like a ambiguous definition. I actually highlighted some of them in light yellow, which you can see I wrote on the post as well. You can comment on them, say, hey, we should add this or this is wrong. Just use the Google Docs comment feature. You can just comment right on the actual proposed definition cell. That would be great. But this doesn't require a major change or even a minor change. These kind of things can be updated with a patch even. So please take a look at those. Subgroup updates. We've had a lot lately and we have a lot coming up. Additional living quarters, or we called it ADU at first, we just kept that name, but the actual proposal is called additional living quarters. It is what it sounds like. It's a data shape to convey additional living quarters on a property. A property can have one or more of them, one to many. It is posted out for review. It has not been brought up for a vote yet. Please take a look at that and comment on it. Pretty minimal changes to the actual property resource for new fields. The shape itself would have 50 fields and some lookups to go along with that. It allows for communicating both legally defined ADUs, which is accessory dwelling unit, and then just for undefined additional living quarters. So you have a garage converted into a living space, and you want to communicate the square footage, the bathrooms, and other features of it. That would be made possible by this data shape that the group has proposed. And thank you, Kyle, for this one. Bulk sale, that's currently active. It is about communicating. This is another one where the original name's kind of different than the working proposal. There's a proposal to create what's working right now. It's not out for a vote yet or anything, but the proposal is to create a resource called package sale. Package sale would be multiple properties or parcels including as one listing, one price, one listing agreement perhaps. I'm sure you MLSs are familiar with that. It's really not a standard way to do that now. We collected feedback. Everybody did it a different way. Most of them were just kind of tweaking their system to adopt to it. So that is where this request came from and where this subgroup was hoping to go. A survey was recently sent to kind of gather high-level details on what the needs of the community are. Specifically, we wanted to know, do you want to add do you want to require each individual property of the package? Do you need to know the details of that? Does that need to be entered? And here are the survey results. It was just a quick 4-question survey. Basically, would you want to implement a package sale standard? 80% said yes, so that's pretty clear. Got some of the comments where you're like, yes, a standard for this is very much needed. You know, we kind of wing it with what we have. So people are very much for that. They would implement it if there was one. So would you support a single entry for a complete package without listing the individual properties included in the package? So what that basically means is if there was a package sale resource, would you want to be able to just enter one record in there, say, hey, this is for a package of 5 properties, and not include any information about the individual properties? About 50-50 on that. 54% said yes, they would support that. And the answers to these are going to guide how the group will continue with this proposal. So, would you support a package that requires one or more listing records, meaning the package sale entry in that package sale resource? Do you also want to require them they add the information in the property resource, which in this case the way the group was viewing it is property would almost be a child of package sale. So that was pretty overwhelming, 80%. And this survey was sent out March 26th. I just looked at it. It was sent to the whole Data Dictionary group. If you want to go back and answer it, that would be great. There was 24 responses. But if you need it, if you want to fill it out, send me an email, dd@reso.org, and I'll get you a new copy of it. Okay. Would you prefer, last question, would you prefer both standalone packages and packages that are groups of listings? So basically saying, do you want both options? Do you want to just say, hey, this is an entire package? And then do you want to have packages that have all the listing information included in the property resource? So I think people obviously want the choice, 80%, yes. So again, if you can fill that survey out, any new data would be appreciated. If you need it, send me an email. I'll get you another copy of it. That group is still active. Duplication upcoming. This is a big one. I had a post out there, it didn't get much action. So I sent out an email to the whole group saying, hey, do you want to participate in this? Here's the goal, here's what we're going to do. I just did that yesterday. I've got almost 50 volunteers for it now. The chair is developing the agenda to send out here in the next couple of days or so. As you know, there is duplication in the dictionary, like someone was just saying about a Boolean that communicates the same information or similar information to a lookup. Some of that might be valuable and useful to keep. That's one thing the group wants to do, is identify those areas. It's not saying we want to get rid of all duplication altogether. Not at all. They want to identify it and then create a standard way to communicate that it's duplication, even if that's adding something to the definition of a field. Hey, this is a pool, yes, no. You also might find this in the pool features field and so forth. They will identify that. They will also make any recommendations they have for perhaps deduplication, which means in this case would be deprecating things, to the Data Dictionary Workgroup, the main group, and they would have to pass any recommendations. But the goal of this group would be to identify duplication, make any recommendations to address it, or communicate the existence of it. I think this is another big one too, multi-select lookups. I think I want to shorten that to just lookups. But this has also been coming up a lot in certification and fast track suggestions. Good example is patio and porch features. You have lookup options in there of porch, patio, screened, deck, enclosed, but none of those are together. You don't have screened porch, you don't have screened patio, you don't have enclosed porch. People were given suggestions typically of both of those items. Say they had screened porch, they would get porch and screened. If they do that, however, you don't really know if those two go together from the end user's perspective. So they're going to look at that, look at the fields where that kind of thing exists. Flooring is another example. Construction materials, to a lesser extent, is another example. Gather all that up, kind of consider options on that. Could be recommending adding screened porch and screened patio. But the group, that is what the group will do there, is determine the best thing to address those things. New construction. So this was an older group that didn't get a lot of participation at first. However, there are two business cases that were sent to R&D, and a new work group or a new subgroup would like to address both of them, particularly a new part that came up, which is like new construction development, communicating information about the development itself, builders, square foot ranges, bathroom ranges, styles available, that kind of stuff, floor plans. And I do have a couple examples of that in metadata submissions being aligned now. Need to identify a chair for that, but it's just another one that's upcoming and should be soon as well. All right, about 3 minutes left for questions if you have any. Oh. All right. Unless you have anything else, Rob? What's that? Okay. All right. Sounds like no questions. Thank you.